In this first tutorial, we're going to look at how to set up an A4 letterhead, antetli kağıt in Turkish, in Photoshop. So, the first thing you do is you go to Create New, you go to Print, and then it will probably be here in your software as well, but if not, you just click on View All Presets and then you will see all of them, but this is the one that you need. You need an A4. So you click on that. It's 210 millimeters wide by 297 millimeters high, and the resolution is 300 pixels per inch. You leave all of that exactly as it is, and then you click Create. Now the first thing we need to do once we've created the document is to set up the margins. And you will already have seen this here. Now a letterhead has margins. It has a space at the top, there's a space on the left, a space on the right, and then also, of course, a space on the bottom. So we need to determine what those are, and the easiest way to do that is to actually make a rectangle. So I have one right here. So the width of this is 420 pixels, which is probably a bit too much, but I'm just going to move this over here and create my left margin. Now the left margin is usually wider than all the others, and there's a reason for that, which I actually explain right here, where I'm showing you this loose leaf binder. And let me just read this. The left-hand margin is a bit wider than the rest because this is the side where the holes for the ringed binder will be. These binders can have two or three hole punchers, so design accordingly, but you can use the left margin like I'm doing here for some narrow stuff like this. Okay? Now, let's take the rectangle and let's decide what the top margin is going to be. Actually, let me just make this into a square. So here we have now the top margin, and now we have the bottom margin. Those two can be equal. And now this here could maybe be 2 centimeters. So we can get rid of this now. We just needed it for the margins. So we have an area here which is a little bit to the right, because this side, like I just mentioned, is going to get used to punch holes inside and to put them inside a binder. Now the second thing that we need to do, actually I shouldn't have deleted that rectangle, I was a little bit too fast. We need to separate this area, this A4 area, into 3 horizontal equal parts. And the reason for that is because the letter will get folded into an envelope, and when you do that you fold it into 3. So if I just do a Control T, if I transform it with a Control T, and I just want to uncheck this for a minute, I'm going to make the height 33.33. So now if I do this and this, and then move it over and do this again, now I can delete it. Now I have separated this area, this big area, this A4 area, into 3 equal parts, and that is because this letter is going to get folded into an envelope before it can get sent out in the post. Now the top part of this piece of paper is also going to have a special area in which to put the address in case you are going to put this letter inside an envelope that has a window. So what I mean by that is, if you go down here, I'm showing you 2 types of envelopes. One of them doesn't have a window, in which case it wouldn't be important whether the address is actually here or not, but the other kind does, and companies tend to use both of them. So we need to make sure that the address of the recipient of the letter is always going to remain inside this area. So we need to somehow mark that out here. So I'm going to go to Illustrator, and I have a template here. It's Diplomat Zarf Pencereli. It's a template for that somebody made. But I'm just going to do one other little thing here, and I'm going to add these boxes because I want to place this exactly where it's supposed to go. Oops. So if I select all of this and go copy, and then I come back here and paste, then I have this right here. And if I put it like this, this window is now going to be exactly where it's supposed to be. So let's zoom in here. But of course I want to get rid of these two. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rasterize this layer. I'm going to make it stop being a vector, and then I'm just going to delete these. Now I could have edited it as a smart object, but in that case, when I save it, this location here would have changed. It would have moved to the center of the page, and I don't want that. I want it to stay exactly where it's supposed to stay for the address. Now we have the basic setup, but what we need now is we need to determine the area in which the actual letter, the text, is going to go. So let's look at that. Now if you go here, I just wrote in iş mektubu örneği. There's a website, very funny name, cahilim.com, but it's a good one, and it shows you all kinds of templates for how letters are actually supposed to be written, business letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this one here, which seems to kind of be appropriate. They're talking about some meatballs that they bought and for blah blah blah. So I'm just going to copy this here and also his name, the address rather. Just go Control C, and then I'm going to open a notepad and paste it in here. Now I have not pasted it directly into Photoshop. I put it in a notepad because I copy pasted this from a PDF document, and when you copy paste things from a PDF document, you will get some very nasty line breaks, just like you see them here. So this is the address. Let me separate that. So all of that needs to get fixed first. So basically what you do is you just move up, up, so I'm going to stop this and then come back when I'm done here, so that you don't waste a lot of time watching me do this. Okay, so now it's fixed. I fixed it, but did I really fix it? I need to make double sure, because there may be other line breaks, and sure enough there are. Look, there's one right here, and there's one right here, and other than that it seems to be fine. So let me open it up all the way. Yeah, it seems to be fine. I'm just going to make a few text changes. So instead of our hypermarket, because we don't have a hypermarket with our companies, I'm just going to say tesislerimiz için piyasaya yeni sunmuş olduğumuz tesislerimiz, or rather, let me just write kafe ve lokantalarımız ve fast food station. Well, yeah, now this looks great. Now, watch carefully. I'm going to save this first, because just give it any old name, because you have to close it and then open it again, because if you don't, those line breaks are not going to be in their proper place. Now I'm just going to copy this and go back to the document and get the text tool and make a box and then paste the text in here. So it has to be left and it should be something like 11 points, and obviously the line height should be something like that. So right now this is Myriad Pro, and that is the Adobe default font. But what I'm going to use is I'm going to move this down a little bit so that the text doesn't sit exactly on this break here. Let me zoom in a bit. I'm going to change this to Calibri. So let me do it Calibri Light, because, and the reason why I'm doing that is because in companies, when people write letters, people like secretaries or employees, they tend to use the default Microsoft Word font, which is Calibri. So you could use Calibri, you could use Arial, in which case I would use Arial Narrow, I think, or you could use Times New Roman. But these three fonts, Times New Roman, Arial, and Calibri, are the default fonts that people will use when they write letters. So for the letter part of this design, for what the person who is actually going to be using this letterhead to write the letter on, we are going to use the default Microsoft font. So I'm just going to go back to Calibri because that is actually the one that looks nicer. And usually people tend to give a bit of leading, so let's just make this go up to 60. Well, 16 seems a bit too much. Let's go up to 15. It's 11 points, which is usually the size that people write letters in. So this now looks pretty much like a legitimate letter that somebody would write to a company. I'm just going to open this up one. And then saygılarımızla Mustafa Göktaşlar. That I am just going to change to my now this is going to be Tekir Efendi, the dry goods seller that I'm going to be making the letterhead for. So I'm going to change this name, Sarman Tekir Efendi. Now let's bring in the address of this guy here. So I'm going to copy that, make a duplicate of the text, move it up, and just paste that in here, and make sure that it stays inside that box, because that's the box that, remember, is this box right here. So we need to see the name of the recipient of the letter, alıcının adresi. We need to see that right in here. So this is now set up. We have the basic essentials. We have the letter, we have the address, we have the margins, we have the 3 folds, for the folding of the letter. We have the box. So now we can actually start the actual design process. So that's what will happen in the next part of this tutorial.